I am part-timing in an IT company that is very close-knit. My boss Steven and his wife were always sweet. It was my first month and it was my boss's birthday week. So he and wife Melissa were kind enough to include me in this fancy dinner they were taking everyone to. A week prior to the dinner, Melissa added everyone to a group chat and asked whether we had any suggestions on where to eat. I told her that I am fine with anything as long there are vegetarian options available or at least chicken. They brought their daughter Steph to the dinner and she is a sweet little girl. Now Steph was really interested in me and she kept on asking me questions about how I look the way I look. Now I am short, 5 feet, but can be somewhat deemed as fit to today's generation. I was transparent with her and told her that I don't restrict myself to certain foods but rather eat everything in moderation. Plus I have a plant-based diet and home-cooked meals so that helps, and I also lift weights. Now Melissa overheard our conversation partially. She pulled me aside and told me that Steph was recovering from eating disorder, so she encouraged me to be honest with her and not lie to her and not to order anything that screams diet. When I saw the menu, there were little to no vegetarian options available. It didn't have anything for me. I was very disappointed and made a comment that, oh wow, there are no vegetarian options. Melissa chimed in and said that eating meat once in a while won't affect my weight. Now, when I say plant-based diet, it's not that I don't eat meat, but I only eat chicken maybe once a week as a side dish, and certain types of fish occasionally, but other than that I mostly eat vegetarian dishes. My food habits are not for my weight, but for my religion / culture. It has nothing to do with my weight. When the waiter came in, I was still glued to my menu when all the others had already ordered. Melissa said that oh, she will have the duck too, and I interrupted and said that no, I will have the garden salad. I hate salads, but there were no other veg options. Melissa got quiet. After a few minutes she told me that I shouldn't have lied and lead on her daughter if I was going to order a skinny salad and starve myself. She said that I am just like those IG influencers who lie to impressionable young girls about their food habits and bodies, and I just proved that by ordering a salad after giving her daughter a "don't restrict yourself" speech, and I probably triggered her eating disorder. I tried to explain that I only ordered a salad because there was no other option in the menu for me, but then she said that I should have just sucked up and eaten the duck as it isn't going to affect my weight, but then again, I corrected that it is a religious thing and not a diet thing. She said that if I eat chicken then obviously I would eat other animals too, and I was just putting up an act. It was horrible. She completely tore me down and I immediately left. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text, and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario, they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. I am a 35-year-old female, been with my fiancé for 3 years. We both work and we both share rent and other expenses. But my fiancé is currently looking for a new job. He lost his old job 3 months ago. My family lives 30 minutes away, and although it's been difficult this year, I decided to get my brother, who has a chronic condition and struggled a lot lately and was in the hospital for a few days for anemia. The one thing he's been wanting for some time. I got him an Xbox that cost me $300. He was so happy, and I'm glad I was able to cheer him up during those times. My fiancé received a few gifts from his family, but he wasn't happy with any of them. I got him a perfume and he liked it. We were visiting my family and we had dinner with them. My fiancé looked at the Xbox I got for my brother and didn't stop talking about it. My parents noticed. I told him to stop complaining about what he got / didn't get this year. That made them uncomfortable, especially since they've been dealing with my brother's health issues and needed to relax. We got home and my fiancé took something from the closet and left for about an hour. I was asleep when he came back. In the morning, I was surprised to find my brother's Xbox in the closet. I woke him and asked him about it. Turned out he dropped me off, drove back to my family's house, and exchanged the gift his aunt gave him, a $14 fancy pen, with my brother's Xbox. He said that my brother was happy to exchange gifts. I was so mad. I told him this wasn't for him, and he basically took something that is not his. Not to mention a pen for an Xbox. That's ridiculous. He told me that maybe I shouldn't have spent $300 while trying to pay for rent. I told him as long as I can pay rent, that's not a problem. And that he needs to find a job if he thinks my money isn't enough. I called my mom and I found out that they didn't actually exchange gifts. My fiancé pressured my brother into giving him his Xbox. I was livid and so mad. I told him to take the Xbox back to my brother, but he said it was between him and my brother, but I insisted. He refused, so I ended up taking it myself. My fiancé argued when I took it and said that I was pressuring him and treating him poorly and have no respect for his feelings. I told him he was wrong to make my brother give him his gift and causing him stress and ruining his joy. I apologized to my brother and my parents, and I felt awful because of how my fiancé behaved. My fiancé isn't talking to me, saying that I have no consideration for his feelings and not understanding how he feels, not having money to buy himself the things he likes. I'm surprised because he has never done anything like this before. I get that he's struggling with finding a job, but this is not an excuse. My husband and I, both in our early 30s, have been together for over a decade and made the decision to not have kids. I like kids. I have nieces and nephews. We just don't want them for our own reasons. He had a vasectomy, which only a few people know about. Our families are aware we don't want kids, as they've asked this before during different major life events, our wedding for instance. We recently bought a 3-bedroom home with a nice yard in a nice area. Excited to show our new home to family and friends, major upgrade to our previous home, we hosted a housewarming. During the party, one of my sibling-in-laws, Alex, made a few indirect comments about all this space. And kids would love it in our house, etc. Eventually they asked point blank when we were having kids. I made a light-hearted joke about it, which is my go-to for this question. Oh, well, I like sushi too much to have to give it up for a pregnancy. Plus not drinking for pregnancy and breastfeeding? No thanks. I tried to make it very light-hearted and laugh it off. Most people just laughed along. That seemed to anger Alex, and I was told children are a joy, and a good mother puts her kids before everything else. I agreed, children are a joy, I like spending time with the nieces and nephews. And obviously I can't be a good mom if I chose sushi over kids, so I just won't be a mom, paraphrased. Still trying to brush it off in a gentle way because I'm not trying to start a fight by telling them to stop asking in front of everyone, because I know my tone will be seen as rude and abrasive. We move on. But Alex is still annoyed and making little comments in their group about how flippant I am about it and how when it finally happens, then I'll understand. My husband heard this and jokingly said, well, if she gets pregnant, that'll be a problem for the divorce lawyers. That seemed to piss them off more, but they stopped. With holidays coming up, we have not been invited to Alex's usual Halloween bonfire. When husband spoke to his parents, they told him Alex was annoyed we were so careless and callous about our child-free status and to say what we did, and they realized we had taken permanent steps to ensure we never had kids. That we know they had to do if to have kids, etc. And we are AHs to just not care. I feel bad because they did do if and lots of fertility treatments to have their kids. And even then they still had a few miscarriages. I can't imagine wanting kids and struggling to have them and then deal with miscarriages. But at the same time, I'm so tired of justifying living my life how I want. I feel terrible my joke was taken the way it was and that I hurt my IELTS. I truly never meant for that to happen. After the bonfire this weekend, we will be reaching out to have a heart-to-heart, if they'll accept it. Either way, I'll be apologizing for hurting their feelings, let them know I love their kids and them. But I will also be firmly putting down any further attempts to discuss our child-free status, if the conversation is about changing our minds. I have not told them our reasons for being child-free, so I think perhaps if they are willing to listen, I'll explain them and hopefully the conversation can be constructive.